Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this occasion, I would like to share what I have done in comparing on English in education policy and planning in Bangladesh and in Indonesia. First of all, let's consider the theoretical framework on this English in education policy and planning. Language policies leave an imprint on the design and the implementation of language curricula at classroom and school levels. As we can see in many cases that these policies dictate the teachers a lot on how and what to teach to their students. According to Juan Baldauf in 2011, language policy initiatives should be located in supranational or global as well as subnational or local domains. It means that language policies should be able to be implemented in national and local contexts. Meanwhile, in the context of language curriculum making or development, language policy determines what language is to be used and learned in school, and what choices in grammar, vocabulary, genre, and style are appropriate in particular contexts of situation and culture. Fason, 2011. Before explaining further about the status of English and English language education and the education system itself, I do think that I need to explain the socio-political and also economic issues of these two countries. So actually both countries are basically populated Muslim majority country, and based on UNESCO Institute of Statistics data in 2013, Bangladesh investment of 2.2% of its GDP in education, and it is one of the lowest figures in South Asia, while Indonesia's government never invested more than 3.5% of its GDP or gross domestic product. So the investment is quite equal. So let's see later if the outcome would be the same or not. Both countries face the same problem, that is poverty, since for the poor people who cannot afford nutritious food will result on malnutrition, while for the literacy rate is quite different. The next thing that I'm going to explain is in sociolinguistic context. 98% of the people of Bangladesh speak Bangla as their national language. And the national language is divided into several regional dialects. There are over 300, and also there are over 300,000 stranded Pakistanis who speak their own language, Urdu, have lived in Dhaka since the end of the Civil War of 1971. Hindi in Bollywood films and music is also present. English has a strong presence in education sector, while Arabic plays important role in religious education in the country. While in Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia is the national lingua franca, and there are around 700 local languages with two divisions. First, majority indigenous languages such as Japanese, Madurese, and also minority indigenous languages, for instance, Lamandau, Alor, and so forth. The next thing is the historical overview, which is also important to be known. So English was introduced in Bangladesh by the British East India Company in the early 17th century, while it was earlier in Indonesia in 16th century. Then during British rule, some social reformers argued that English and Western education for Indians. At the end of the British colonial rule in 1947, the current territory of Bangladesh was established as one of the wings of the Dominion of Pakistan, called East Pakistan. Then English served as the link language between East and West Pakistan. And in post-independence, Bangla was given official recognition as the national language, and English was also received policy recognition. But in practical terms, English was considered as a foreign language. And in the 1970s and 80s, nationalistic fervor was weakening and the nation was waking up the necessity of English. After several reforms in 1980s, English was introduced as the compulsory subject from grade 1 in 1991. While during the colonial era in Indonesia, English is taught in Mulo, which is equivalent to junior high school, and AMS, which is equivalent to high school. During the war with Japan, the Japanese language is taught intensively and even targeted as second language in Indonesia. Soon after the independence of Indonesia was proclaimed, English was chosen as a compulsory language taught in secondary schools and university. English was taught in primary schools since 1994 as an optional school subject. Here we come to the main point of this presentation, that is language and education planning in these two countries. It is regarded as one of the key sites and mechanisms for implementing national language policies. That's what Kaplan and Bodov says in 1997. So we are going to see how English is positioned and implemented in education system. The first thing that I compare is the status of English within education system in these two countries. There are three major streams in both countries, including secular education. These streams follows the national curriculum, which is Bangla is the language of instruction in Bangladesh, and Bahasa Indonesia is in Indonesia. Second one is madrasa education. It provides Islamic education together with the secular subjects. National language is the medium of the instruction, with Arabic and English being taught as compulsory subjects. And the third one is English medium education. It is provided by privately run schools for the social elite and members of the professional and business communities. The last one is non-government organizations or NGOs. They have made critical contribution to education in Bangladesh, but not in Indonesia. One of them is BRAC education, which provides pre-primary, primary, and inclusive education to hard-to-reach, disadvantaged, disabled, and ethnic minority children. English language teaching is also delivered in BRAC schools. Now we move to the role of English in education system in Bangladesh, with over 30 million students learning English. Bangladesh has one of the largest English learning population in the world. It has the same status as the national language in the school curriculum and occupies almost 19% of the curricular space. And English also has a higher status in the secular education, while in madrasa education it has a marginal status. In English medium schools, English is the dominant language and Bangla has a peripheral role. English teaching and learning has yet to produce desirable outcomes across the country, particularly in secular state schools and madrasa schools. In fact, poor levels of English proficiency are common among teachers and students alike in Bangladesh. On the other side, in Indonesia, there have been changes in language policies and curricula since 2004. This is a brief review. So, in 2004, competency-based curriculum was implemented nationwide. The English language learning include language skills, community competence, the position of English as a foreign language, English as a means of communications and intercultural awareness. Conceptually, teachers emphasize on performance-based, but practically teachers relied on the commercially published textbooks. The government changed the curriculum again in 2006 into school-based curriculum, since there have been limited success in the previous curriculum. It sets core competencies guideline, and the curriculum were designed and developed by English teachers who work within teams, and in the same year the government released a new program called International Standard Schools, but it created social, economic, and educational inequalities, so the program was stopped. In 2013, the 2013 ELT curriculum is said it is the current curriculum. It is considered to be able to improve the education quality and accommodate global demands. The current curriculum prescribes a 5-stage learning cycle using the scientific approach. In the critical lens, the competencies which have been set do not reflect communicative competence and the totality of competencies that students have to develop to become competent users of English. Thus, it is salient for us to know what the problem or constraint which hamper the successfulness of the curriculum itself. They are like the government invested limited budget for education, and also inadequate personal policy, which means that teachers have lack of professionalism regarding their language proficiency, content knowledge, and also pedagogical skills. The school's instructions is also dominated by what is tested in the examination. It is due to government-controlled language assessment. So there is social and educational competition for high grades and exam success. And also there's a problem with the poor school management and students' perspective, which they thought that they may not be successful if they do not take private tutoring. So it leads parents to resort to private tutoring in English, and it becomes a threat for a formal sector. All in all, by seeing the gap in both countries between the government's expectations and the disappointing reality faced by the teachers, learners, and also interested stakeholders, it is likely to be policy without planning. Eventually, I'm going to convey the recommendations or key principles to provide directions for adapting the official curriculum to a particular pedagogical context. For Bangladesh, the government should recognize the complexity of the situation and also delivering clear and honest messages about the value of English and what it can do for people within certain constraints, and also bring together all actors and ensuring continuity. Utilizing ELT projects for attaining sustainability and self-dependence, and also making use of new technologies for teacher professional development, and continuing to focus on the government schools and giving attention to madrasa education. And don't forget to work on the high level of policies such as the pre-service teacher training programs and examination systems, and also support the professionalism of teachers, also teacher salaries and working conditions. While for Indonesia government, there is a need for revisiting roles of teachers from a curriculum development perspective, and also negotiating policy and curriculum materials, teacher-driven language curriculum development, positioning and framing English language pedagogy, integrating assessment and pedagogy as a dynamic approach, re-envisioning sound language teacher training education, and also sustaining vibrant teacher professional development. I think that's all that I can explain you. I hope that everything has been clear for you about the comparison of these two countries in education planning and policies. Thank you for listening and watching the video.